What if I told you the stars we adored traded more than just their talent for fame? Behind the glitz and glamour of 1950s Hollywood, these A-list men sold their bodies to stay on top. At least 8 of Hollywood's top leading men traded their bodies for fame, and some paid a far heavier price than we could ever imagine. Who were they? What did they endure behind closed doors? And why did these A-listers, seemingly on top of the world, have to sell their very souls just to get in front of the camera? Everything will be revealed in today's video. 1. James Dean. James Dean wasn't just Hollywood's rebel. He was a product of its darkest deals. When James Dean arrived in Hollywood in 1951, he had no money, no connections, just a haunting face and a dream. His innocence made him easy prey for the powerful figures controlling the industry. At the Chateau Marmont, a place known for shady deals, young men like Dean weren't called by their names. They were numbered. Dean, a quiet 20-year-old from Indiana, was number 6. Dean's big break didn't come from talent alone. Director Rogers Brackett, who took a special interest in him, used his power to exploit Dean for his own benefit. Actress Christine White recalls hearing Dean crying in Brackett's bathroom at 3 a.m., only to show up to set the next morning like nothing had happened. His career started with secret visits to influential men, including one where he had to spend the night with an older investor to land a TV role. But things got even darker. Dean was secretly filmed in a Wilshire Boulevard penthouse while entertaining a studio exec. That tape became leverage, tying Dean to the industry's invisible puppet strings. His life, who he dated, what he wore, was no longer his own. Dean, once a carefree rebel, grew more withdrawn and paranoid, like someone who thought they were always being watched. At just 24, Dean's life was tragically cut short in a mysterious car crash, right when his career was beginning to soar. He had traded his body for fame, but what he received wasn't the freedom he sought. It was a life controlled by others, and he wasn't the only one to pay this price. 2. Marlon Brando, the man who slept his way to fame. Marlon Brando wasn't just a Hollywood legend. He was a man who sold his body for a role. In the 1940s, Marlon Brando was hustling on small New York stages, but he knew fame wouldn't come without paying a price. Brando's rise started when legendary director George Cukor brought him into his circle, offering him private rehearsals in exchange for something more than just acting skills. This wasn't a one-time deal. Brando slept with powerful men to climb the ladder. By the time Brando hit Hollywood, he had already used his body as currency. He slept with directors, producers, and even journalists, all in exchange for roles. In a diary found after his death, Brando confessed to a list of men who helped him, men who'd shaped his career through bedroom deals. One of those men was Jack Warner, the head of Warner Brothers, who bailed him out of a scandal to ensure his career could continue. Brando's famous quote, "I slept with anyone who could give me a part," was more than a joke. It was a reality he lived. While he was the face of rebellion and power on screen, his private life was controlled by a web of influential men. His career soared, but it came at the cost of his identity. But Brando wasn't the only star whose rise was built on these dark deals. Sal Mo. Sal Mo's rise to fame was quick, but his fall was even quicker, and it all started with a price he couldn't afford. In 1955, at just 16 years old, Sal Mo landed a role in Rebel Without a Cause after a private audition at the home of a famous producer. But to get that part, Sal was forced to comply with demands far darker than anyone knew. "They said I'd get the part if I could convince them I was soft enough," Sal confided. That night, his career was bought with more than just his acting. It cost him his dignity. For years, Sal struggled to escape the dark side of Hollywood that used him and discarded him when he was no longer needed. After James Dean's death, Sal spiraled, turning to small roles in cheap films and even selling his body for minor parts in B-movies. But in 1976, just before he was set to expose everything, Sal vanished. Days before his murder, he warned a reporter, "I've got names, photos, tapes. If something happens to me, go find them." On February 12, 1976, Sal was found dead outside his apartment, stabbed by 2 men he had called for a secret meeting. His wallet was untouched, his watch still on, and his briefcase, rumored to contain the proof of everything he had been hiding, vanished. The police ruled it a robbery gone wrong, but the truth remained buried with Sal. His death was a warning. In Hollywood, some truths are too dangerous to expose. But there was another star, one whose life was shaped by secrets he could never escape. 4. Rock Hudson. Rock Hudson wasn't just a heartthrob. He was a prized possession in a secret world. In the 1950s, Rock Hudson was the ultimate Hollywood gentleman. His chiseled looks and smooth charm made him the perfect leading man. But what the public didn't know was that Hudson's success was built on silence and obedience. Managed by the powerful Henry Wilson, Hudson became the perfect companion for elite Hollywood events, doing whatever was asked of him without question. Hudson's relationships with powerful men in Hollywood weren't just rumors. They were the price of his fame. According to leaked studio memos, he was obedient, discreet, and always ready to accompany clients when needed. He didn't ask questions or refuse. He simply showed up, poured drinks, and if asked, went into private rooms to satisfy the desires of those with the power to make or break careers. Even at the height of his fame, Hudson's true identity remained a secret. His image as the perfect heterosexual leading man was carefully maintained by the industry, even though the reality was much darker. Hudson's silence was his survival, and in Hollywood, silence was often the only way to stay alive. But Rock Hudson wasn't the only star living behind a mask. Another man, once a golden boy, spent his life hiding the truth. 5. Cary Grant. Cary Grant wasn't just a Hollywood legend, he was a prisoner to his own image. Cary Grant, the ultimate Hollywood gentleman, was adored by fans for his charm, good looks, and suave persona. But behind closed doors, Grant was not the man he portrayed on screen. His rise to fame came at a steep cost. His silence. Grant's career was heavily influenced by his relationships with powerful men who controlled his every move. Early in his career, he formed a tight bond with actor Randolph Scott, and their relationship went far beyond the surface. While the public saw Grant as the perfect leading man, insiders knew the truth. He was frequently invited to private gatherings and parties where roles were traded for much more than acting talent. A former cinematographer recalled a night when Grant hosted 3 directors at his home and then disappeared with them into a locked room. Shortly after, he landed a major role in Bringing Up Baby. It wasn't just his acting skills that got him the part, it was his willingness to comply. Grant's life was one of carefully curated images. His relationships, his roles, even his personal life were all dictated by the need to keep Hollywood's secrets. The price for being the perfect man in front of the camera was living a life where nothing, not even love, was truly his own. But Cary Grant's story wasn't the only one of a man forced to play a part. One more star would reveal just how far the industry would go to keep its most treasured secrets. 6. Clark Gable. Before Clark Gable became the iconic Rhett Butler in Gone with the Wind, his rise to fame was far from glamorous. In fact, Gable's career was built on relationships that the public would never have imagined. As a young man, Gable was taken in by a wealthy playwright, William H. Wright, who provided him with everything he needed: clothes, food, and even pocket money in exchange for complete obedience. It was a deal that would shape Gable's future in Hollywood. Once in Los Angeles, Gable's loyalty to those who helped him didn't end. Rumors swirled about his relationship with director George Cukor, known for his openly gay lifestyle. Hollywood insiders claimed that Gable's career was influenced by his connection with Cukor, and that Gable in turn helped bury Cukor's secrets. As his career soared, so did the whispers about what he had sacrificed to get there. Gable was often seen as the ideal leading man, the charming, confident lover on screen, but behind closed doors, he lived in constant fear of his past being exposed. Even at the height of his fame, Gable's past was a carefully guarded secret. His relationships, his career, and his very identity were controlled by the hidden forces that shaped his rise. It wasn't just his talent that got him to the top. It was his willingness to do whatever it took to stay there. But as Gable buried his past, another star was slowly unraveling, torn apart by the very secrets Hollywood forced him to keep. Why would go to keep its most treasured secrets? 7. Gene Kelly, the dance legend's shadowy footwork. Gene Kelly's legendary dance moves weren't the only thing that kept him in Hollywood. His silence did too. Gene Kelly, one of the most iconic dancers of his time, didn't just charm audiences with his graceful moves. he had a darker secret behind his rise to fame. Before he became a Hollywood sensation, Kelly was a dance instructor in Pittsburgh. He came to New York with just 2 suitcases and a list of names from former students who could help him climb the ladder. But it wasn't just his talent that opened doors. It was his ability to comply with the hidden demands of powerful producers. Kelly's entry into Hollywood was shaped by secretive, late-night auditions. According to one former trainee, "We weren't judged by our dance moves. We were judged by our bodies, our obedience, and our willingness to bend." Kelly made it through this screening process and quickly caught the eye of director Stanley Donen, with whom he would share a secret, intimate relationship for nearly a decade. Despite his fame, Kelly was still pressured into exclusive engagements with wealthy investors, where his charm was used to seal deals behind closed doors. Even after achieving stardom, Kelly couldn't escape the grip of Hollywood's elite. He was constantly reminded that his success came with a price: obedience, discretion, and silence. In private letters, Kelly confessed the emotional toll this took on him. "They want me to dance for them," he wrote, "but no one ever asks if I'm tired, if I'm sad, or if I'm disgusted with myself." But Gene Kelly's story wasn't the only one of a man trapped by his success. Another star would take a stand, but at a cost that would haunt him forever. 8. Tony Curtis. Tony Curtis wasn't just Hollywood's golden boy. He was a man who knew exactly how to use his face and his body. Tony Curtis, with his striking good looks and undeniable charm, was the epitome of the 1950s heartthrob. But what many didn't know was that his career was not just built on talent. It was built on the willingness to sacrifice far more than his image. In 1948, fresh from the Bronx, Curtis walked into an audition at Universal Studios. 5 minutes in, the producer didn't ask about his acting skills. He asked, "Are you obedient?" That wasn't just small talk. It was the beginning of Curtis's trade-off. According to journalist Robert Hoffler, Curtis once spent an entire week living in a casting director's private apartment in exchange for a role in Criss Cross, the movie that would launch his career. Curtis never denied these arrangements. In a 1990 interview that was later cut, he admitted, "I knew exactly how to use my face. It was the most valuable thing I had when I was young." As Curtis's career soared, he became known for roles in films like Some Like It Hot. Yet, behind the glitz, his private journals revealed a darker side. In one entry, he wrote, "If people knew what I did to get this role, they'd never think I was sweet again." Curtis had traded his body and silence for the spotlight, and it was a deal that haunted him. Finally, the price of fame in Hollywood wasn't just money. It was silence, obedience, and even lives. Behind the spotlight, stars were trapped in a system that demanded everything, even their souls. From secret deals to hidden control, the true cost of stardom was far darker than anyone imagined. But is Hollywood any different today, or has the price of fame simply become more secretive? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell for more revelations.